And Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is just stepping up to the microphone here in Toronto. Let's listen in.
Good afternoon. My name is Yvonne Baker. I'm the Member of Parliament for Etobicoke Centre, and it's an honour to be here with our Prime Minister and our Minister of National Defence, Anita Anand. I'd also like to acknowledge the presence of Alexandra Hitchie, the President of the Ukrainian-Canadian Congress. We are gathered on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. Just over 31 years ago, Ukraine declared its independence, and I was with my grandfather Ivan that day. My grandparents lived in Ukraine during the Soviet regime, and my grandfather, like millions of his generation, like millions of prior generations, risked everything for a free and independent Ukraine. So you can imagine when Ukraine declared its independence on that day in 1991, this might have been the proudest day of his life. But he also said to me that day something I'll never forget. He said, now that Ukraine is independent, we need to continue the fight for Ukraine's independence. I was 14 years old at the time, and I remember saying to him, Tido, what are you talking about? The Ukrainian government has declared independence, the people want it, the international community supportive, it's over, you've won. I said, you are wrong. And of course, I was wrong. In 2014, Russia twice invaded Ukraine, and a year ago to this day, Russia began its further full-scale invasion of Ukraine. When I speak to people in the community, when I speak to Canadians about the war, first and foremost, what I hear about is the horror, the hundreds of thousands of victims, the bombs raining down on apartment buildings, on hospitals, on kindergartens, women and children being killed, tortured, and raped by Russian soldiers. But I also hear stories of great courage, of people of all ages, even the elderly, picking up weapons to defend their homeland in Ukraine, or Ukrainians leaving their professions and leaving their families to go fight, or outmanned and outgunned, holding the line against a much larger military, even if it means certain death. But there's one other thing I hear from Canadians, and that I sincerely believe, is that this war is not just about Ukraine, it's about all of us. That Ukrainians are not just fighting for their security, they're fighting for global security, and they're fighting for Canada's security. So as we mark this anniversary, I hope that we take the opportunity to mourn the victims, that we honor the courage of the Ukrainian people, and that we redouble our efforts to ensure that history does not repeat itself again, that we are not back here a year from now marking a second anniversary, so that we do everything possible to ensure that the Ukrainian people win and that we all win. Canada's support for Ukraine has been unwavering, and our Prime Minister has been leading us in that. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you, Prime Minister, for your leadership in that. I think Canadians can be incredibly proud of the contribution that Canada has made, the role that Canada has played in supporting Ukraine and the Ukrainian people and supporting security and democracy around the world. A big part of the support that Canada has provided has been military assistance. And of course, the person leading that work has been our Minister of National Defence, Anita Anand. And so I want to thank you, Minister, for your relentless work to make sure we provide Ukraine with the military support that it needs. And with that, I'd like to invite our Minister of National Defence, Anita Anand, to say a few words.
Merci beaucoup, Yvonne. Good afternoon. It has been 1 year since Vladimir Putin launched his full-scale and illegal invasion of Ukraine. Flattened towns, bullet-riddled hospitals, mass graves, thousands of children torn apart from their families forever. Tout cela au nom de fantasme impérialiste.
This has all been done in the name of the imperialism of a brutal dictator.
When Putin ordered his tanks across the Ukrainian border, he thought the world would stand by. He thought Kyiv would fall. He thought Ukrainians would freeze in the dark. He thought NATO would fracture. He thought Ukraine would surrender. He was wrong. For every bomb, missile, and mercenary Vladimir Putin has dropped down, we have seen the Ukrainian spirit rise up. Ukraine's military has retaken thousands of square kilometers of territory, from Kharkiv to Kherson to Kyiv. Un an après le début de la guerre de Poutine, le
1 year
monde
after the
voit
start
que
of
le
Putin's
cœur
war, the world
des
has
Ukrainiens
seen
est
the
fort,
heart of
que leur
Ukrainians and that their heart is
détermination
strong.
est résolue, et
They
que
are
l'Ukraine
resolutely
ne sera pas
determined,
vaincue.
and Ukraine will
Canada
not
has
be
stood with
taken.
Ukraine from the very beginning. And by that I mean since 2015, the Canadian Armed Forces have trained over 35,000 members of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. The Canadian Armed Forces have also transported more than 7 million pounds of aid on behalf of our allies. And we have also provided more than $1 billion of military aid, from tanks to armored vehicles, air defense capabilities, artillery, and more. I was in Kyiv last year, weeks before the full-scale further invasion. What I saw there was remarkable. Children, parents, teachers, doctors, nurses, all standing resolute. And then when I was back in Kyiv and Irpin last month, I witnessed again their unshakable courage. And the bottom line is that Ukrainians are fighting valiantly for their homeland, for their sovereignty, and for their territorial integrity. But they are also fighting for us, because they are fighting for democracy itself. So to our Ukrainian friends and partners, I say this: you can trust that Canada stands shoulder to shoulder with you in the short and the long term. Le Canada sera là aussi longtemps.
Canada will be there for as long as necessary.
So that Ukraine can declare victory. Slava Ukraini. I would now like to ask the Prime Minister to take the podium. Thank you. Merci.
Bonjour tout le monde.
Hello, everyone.
Good afternoon. Merci, Anita, pour votre allocution.
Thank you, Anita, for your remarks and for all the work you are doing to support Ukraine. I'm very happy to be here in the company of Ivan Baker. He is a great defender of Ukraine and a strong voice for Canadian values in our Parliament. Thank you, Ivan, for everything you do.
The Canadian Armed Forces service members at the Fort York Armory. The motto of one of the units here is mindful of our ancient valor. Today, we are also mindful of Ukraine's enduring valor. But before I begin, I do want to address the humanitarian crisis in Turkey and Syria. Powerful quakes have killed tens of thousands, destroyed hundreds of thousands of homes, and displaced millions of people. Canadians have been heartbroken by the images they've seen, and they want to help. So today, we announced that Canada will match $10 million in donations raised by the Humanitarian Coalition and its members. This is in addition to our commitment to match donations to the Canadian Red Cross Earthquake in Turkey and Syria appeal. Nous annonçons aussi que nous allons verser
We are also announcing that we will be donating an additional $20 million in direct humanitarian aid on response to the United Nations call for assistance in Turkey and Syria. In total, Canada has contributed $50 million following the earthquake to provide vital assistance to those affected in the form of water, food, cover, and healthcare services. Canada stands with these people who are suffering so much.
That earthquake was a reminder that there are tragedies that cannot be prevented. Natural disasters that take lives and cause inescapable devastation. But there are also entirely senseless but avoidable tragedies born of evil, like what the world has witnessed in Ukraine. Millions of Ukrainians have been forced to flee their homes, and their fellow citizens are dying every day, not because of an act of God, but because of the cowardly acts of one man, Vladimir Putin, and his enablers. A year ago, Putin invaded a sovereign, democratic country. He was driven by greed, by cruelty. He was under the illusion that he could overtake Ukraine in a matter of days. Well, 365 days later, Ukraine is still standing strong. 365 days and counting. Il y a un an maintenant, le Kremlin a commencé à lancer
the
des
Kremlin
attaques brutales
began
qui ont tué
launching
des
brutal
civils
attacks,
et pris pour cible
killing
des
civilians
maisons, des hôpitaux.
and targeting
Les
homes and
intimidateurs
hospitals.
comme le président Poutine
Bullies
ne
such as
comprendront
President
jamais
Putin will never
que la peur
understand.
est une arme
They will never
impuissante
understand that
contre
fear
ceux qui se battent
is a
pour leur
powerless
liberté.
weapon against those who are fighting
À
for their
répétition,
freedom.
la défense ukrainienne
We have
a
repeatedly
résisté
seen
à
that
l'agression
Ukrainian
russe.
defense has resisted the
But we know
onslaught
that
from
this
Russia.
fight is not over. Today, Canada is announcing new military support for our friends in Ukraine. We will deliver 4 additional Leopard 2 tanks to the armed forces of Ukraine and an armored recovery vehicle. This is in addition to the 4 Leopard tanks already in the region, which CAF members are right now training Ukrainian tank members to use. We're also delivering 5,000 rounds of ammunition, which will help the armed forces of Ukraine continue to defend their freedom and fight for Ukraine's territorial integrity. Another critical part of our support is to impose further costs on Russia for its illegal and unjustifiable actions. We are announcing new sanctions on 129 individuals and 63 entities, including Russian deputy prime ministers, ministers, other members of the Office of the President of Russia, members of the Russian military, and those involved in the production of artillery and weapons used in Ukraine. We're also banning certain chemicals used in the manufacture of electronics from being exported to Russia. Et nous luttons contre les pratiques commerciales
We are
trompeuses que la Russie et
fighting
le
false
Belarus
commercial practices that Russia and Belarus are using to try and force prices and attack Canadian producers. From the very beginning, these two countries have been lying about the invasion and have been lying about the value of their merchandise. As such, we have given the Canada Border Services new tools to protect market integrity and especially to protect Canadian producers against this dishonest intervention. Canada has led the way across the globe to install a regime of sanctions that has never been levied against a large economy before. The aim has been to reduce Putin's ability to finance this illegal war.
Our quarrel is not with the people of Russia or of Belarus. Many brave people in these countries are standing up to their dictators. And we see it here at home, too, with Russian Canadians supporting Ukraine and calling for an end to this unjust invasion. Vladimir Putin made a grave miscalculation when he launched his war of aggression. He underestimated Ukrainians, and he underestimated the solidarity of their friends around the world. He wanted to threaten and weaken NATO and democracies around the world, but today we are stronger and more unified than ever. Aux Nations Unies, une majorité écrasante de
In the
pays
United
ont
Nations,
maintes
a
fois
resounding
voté
majority of
pour condamner la
countries
guerre
have voted to condemn the war
qu'elle prenne fin.
and have called for its termination.
Ils l'ont fait encore une fois hier.
They did this once again yesterday. The International Criminal Court is continuing its investigation of war crimes committed by Russia in Ukraine.
Together with our friends and allies, we are holding Putin and his henchmen to account. And we are delivering critical and significant support to Ukraine. Momentum is on Ukraine's side. They have launched astonishing counteroffensives, reclaimed territory, and forced Russian troop withdrawals. To date, Canada has provided more than $5 billion in support to Ukraine and its people. And we're the only country to issue Ukraine sovereignty bonds, which Canadians purchased to support the government of Ukraine directly. The impacts of these are being felt on the ground by soldiers and by citizens. We've provided military training for more than 35,000 members of Ukraine's security forces through Operation Unifier. We've delivered M777 howitzers that have helped Ukraine secure victories in key battles. We've committed over 200 Canadian-made armoured vehicles that are helping soldiers defend the border in northern Ukraine. Nous avons acheté un système national de missiles surface-air perfectionné.
A national ground-to-surface air missile to help Ukraine defend itself against Russian air attacks. We donated 8 tanks in collaboration with our allies to assist Ukraine in winning on the battlefield. We've imposed sanctions on over 2,400 people and entities. And notably, we led with sanctions against the Russian central bank.
Stability in Ukraine in the face of war, so that schools and hospitals can stay open, so that the heat and lights will stay on through the winter, and so that the government of Ukraine can continue supporting its people. Canada
has been standing with Ukraine since the beginning of this conflict, when Russia illegally annexed Crimea and triggered a conflict in eastern Ukraine. We will continue to stand by Ukraine. This morning, my G7 counterparts and I discussed directly with President Zelensky. We reaffirmed that our support for Ukraine will be unshakable and required as long as necessary. We called on Russia to immediately withdraw its military forces unconditionally from Ukraine's territory within internationally recognized borders of this country.
Putin is dangerous, he is cowardly, and he is weak. His brazen disregard for human life, his irresponsible rhetoric, and his willingness to inflict terrible violence on innocent people may seem to have no limits. But what is truly without limits is the courage and resolve of those who fight every day for their freedom. The everyday Ukrainian citizens who joined the armed forces. The children who had to be brave and say goodbye to a parent or grandparent so they could be safer here in Canada. The soldiers, nurses, doctors, mayors, postal workers, and so many more who've stayed in Ukraine and continue to serve the place that they call home and preserve the Ukraine that they are fighting for. The journalists on the front lines who tell the stories of this war so that Russian-abetted disinformation and misinformation is called to account. And of course, the people here at home and around the world who donate what they can and fly the blue and yellow flag in solidarity. This solidarity is on full display in every corner of Canada. Canadians are standing with Ukrainians, while Ukrainians are standing up for more than their own freedom. They're standing up for all of us. Slava Ukraini!